Next up on the draft season podcast, 2023 NBA team preview series are those Mavericks out of Dallas. We are here. We are back. It's your boy Sean Fafke. I'm here with my brother Raz. And just to get into the proceedings this evening, obviously we're gonna talk about the Dallas Mavericks last season. Had a nice little run to the Western Conference Final. Yeah, they beat the hell out of it. They beat the hell out of the Jazz. They put the final knife in the back of the Utah Jazz and ended that regime as we did know. But I mean, Raz, just to get into these Dallas Mavericks, who's in, who's out. A couple big acquisitions for them. The team's a little different than it was last year. So let's get into this.
So I mean, they got Christian Wood. It's probably going to be a big piece for them offensively. Some additional firepower from the center position. JaVale McGee is there as a free agent. Jaden Hardy drafted number 37. I like that pick for them. Theo Pinson, everybody needs a glue guy. So shout out to Theo. Staying employed, keeping that morale up. Miss him out here in New York. Tyler Dorsey, free agent, and McKinley Wright, the fourth. You really got to love your name to name somebody at 4 times. Shout out to McKinley Wright. Jalen Brunson obviously left. He's with the Knicks. Sterling Brown trade to the Rockets. Trey Burke to the Rockets. Marquise Chris also to the Rockets. Boban Marjanovic, sad. Good guy, man. Everybody loves the Boban. Trade to the Rockets as well. Moses Wright signed out in China. So, this team, we can discuss the elephant in the room at first. Jalen Brunson was a big piece of some of that preliminary postseason success that they had last year. And he really stepped up when Luka was out. He's somebody that this team could depend on down the stretch, as a closer and just as a secondary ball handler for them. So with him missing, it's kind of time for Spencer Dinwiddie to earn his contract. So Sean, what do you make at some of these additions and some of these subtractions on this team?
I mean, more of the Spencer Dinwiddie experience is not great for anybody. I kind of, I think people, the idea of Spencer Dinwiddie is, greater than the actual day-to-day Spencer Dinwiddie experience. Credits to Spencer Dinwiddie, though. He was a lot better when he did get over to Dallas. So that really rejuvenated his career and brought it back around. Some of the and obviously he was coming off an injury early in the season, so some of that could have just been rust. I do think greener light for Spencer Dinwiddie. I think that's not going to help in terms of efficiency. It's very strange. I do think he could. You just talk about what the Spencer Dinwiddie experience, why a lot of people loved him at first. If you go and look back at his career in the last couple of years, since the couple of the injuries that he's come up and he's had, I mean, some of his free throw rate has dropped a couple years down the road. So he's not getting to the line as much. And I do think the free throw line, getting to the line was a huge part of his game. Is that something that he's going to be able to turn up again this season? Will be a big part about, can he be that number one option? Obviously, playing off of a guy like Luka is going to make the game really easy for a guy like Spencer Dinwiddie. He doesn't really have to have that, but yeah, more Spencer Dinwiddie isn't necessarily great. But we talk about Brunson, and Brunson was incredible for this team as a second side creator. We talk about him just being one of the best guard finishers in the league, being able to finish off of 2 feet, being able to finish off of 1 foot, in traffic, around the trees and guys who are much bigger. Jalen Brunson's only listed at 6'1". On a good day, he's still really small in his own right. But how much do you think this team is going to miss Jalen Brunson? Is that going to affect them more in the regular season or in the postseason? Because we also saw the effect that Brunson had in those playoff series was really high for the Mavs. So where do you think he'll be missed more?
I think it's going to come down to the postseason. I think Luka and the team around him, if Hardaway Jr. is healthy, Maxi Kleber, Christian Wood, they're all performing to the top of their abilities. Luka is good enough to drag a team to a certain amount of wins each year just with his superstardom. So I think they'll be fine in the regular season. They might not crack that top 4 or even that top 5. They'll probably hang around that, but they're not going to be one of the best teams in the conference. And they weren't going to be with Jalen Brunson either. But I think once you get into the playoffs and these matchups really become, tough where they've scouted you, they're tuned into, they're making adjustments over a 7 game series. Somebody like Jalen Brunson to help bail out Luka was going to be, just that added crutch that he had, and another person that was very dependable with the ball in his hands, especially in big time moments. So I think that's where they'll miss him the most.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I know you brought up Tim Hardaway Jr., former Nick great, obviously, and he didn't have the best season, which was, I think, actually his, by the time he went down with his injury, was about around the time of the season where the Mavs really started playing a lot of their best ball in the league. Yeah, he looks like he only shot 33% from three last year, and he never really found a good rhythm for them. So him being fully healthy this year is going to be a really interesting part of the core. He's obviously going to bring a lot more floor spacing for them. And it's hard to talk about this Mavs team and trying to project what they're going to be this year without speaking about just how good of a defensive team that they were in Jason Kidd's first season as that team. Obviously, I mean, Jason Kidd kind of unlocked a whole different Reggie Bullock. I think Reggie Bullock coming off of his best season, which is, it's really strange to see because obviously Reggie Bullock has been around the league for some time. He was on the Lakers previously. He was on those Knicks teams. I think we all knew Reggie Bullock. He's somebody who always had that label as a shooter, and he's always been able to shoot going back to even like the early portions of his career, and going back to when he was with the Tar Heels in at UNC. And yeah, he's also on the Clippers, if I remember, in the early part of his career early. But yeah, he turned into a really good defender. And, it's this team defended at such a high level last year. Off the top of your head, Raz, last year. And I know if we, in general, where they ended up defensively, I know after I think it was like after like New Year's Eve, they were like the best defense in the league. Do you know where they ended up in total for the season last year?
Probably number 7 or 8.
Yeah, they were they were 7th, bro.
I'm getting good at this, my bro.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, we're gonna have to catch you off guard with some of these new some of the actual trivia's. But yeah, this defense was incredibly good last year. We spoke about it on a series that we did last year. In terms of Dorian Finney-Smith kind of being the defensive connector and the guy who's able to guard multiple positions at once. His IQ defensively, always being in the right parts, being one of those wings who are also able to guard up and guard fours, and you can also throw them on really some of the best scorers and the guards in the league. So yeah, Dorian Finney-Smith is another one of the just unheralded guys. Bringing him back, he signed into a 3-year extension, previous or recently. So he's going to be a part of this team. But what else, just that stands out to you about this Dallas team? Thinking about them this year, and also just we spoke about it a little bit on the Denver video and just connecting where this team is in general. Obviously, when you get, a franchise-changing player like Luka, your team becomes, a lot better early. Obviously, the Porzingis trade, which was looked at as, the transaction in this team's history that ended up, that was going to give, Luka his long-term running mate, and obviously, Porzingis, whether it was the injuries, just lack of, fit, or, just him losing, some of that early bounce that he had with the Knicks and not just being the same guy. Or, I've heard there are rumors about him and Luka, not being on, the same page there. But long term for this Mavericks team, obviously you have Luka Doncic, and there's some good pieces around him. But obviously, when you look at stacking the books in your odds in your favor, to make sure you have a team that contend for championships, it seems like this team is still in that part where Luka outer body experience is necessary, to even get. It was a part of why they got to the Western Conference Finals. It's gonna, as long as you have Luka, you're always gonna have one of the best players on the court in any series they're in, which is going to give you a strong chance to win any series. Once shit gets tough. But to really unlock a championship Luka Doncic led team, what do you think this team is missing?
I just wrestle with this question a lot, man. I think they're going to need a big, not named JaVale McGee as a starter. I think I love JaVale McGee and how he's been able to kind of just shake himself away from that
True.
Shaq and the Fool All Stars. Like he's a champion. Shout out to fucking JaVale McGee. Let's say that right now. And I think they'll need a big. They'll need an actual big that can get a bucket and also be a rim protector. It sounds ridiculous, but they need a two-way big to play with Luka. I think the defense and shooting probably needs to increase around them. And I think they need a better secondary ball handler than Spencer Dinwiddie. So it's like this team is going to be good because Luka is going to raise the floor on them, but their ceiling is capped until they increase those complementary pieces. Like they need a center that is an offensive threat, and obviously they have that with Wood, but I don't know how I feel about that as a long term starter for them. I think he really might be better off. I know they said they don't want him to be the microwave, but he might be better off on this roster being the microwave. I just
Christian
think
Wood.
they need, yeah.
I mean,
Um,
yeah, Jason Kidd it seems like he's coming to the season as the microwave guy, the sixth man off the bench, which I do think just to keep some of their defensive identity, which played a big part in where they got to last season. And yeah, Christian Wood is another one of these guys where it's just like from like if you play fantasy basketball, you've probably known about Christian Wood for the past couple of years. He's somebody who is a stat sheet stuffer extraordinaire. He's somebody who's going to get his buckets. He can really he can really shoot the ball really well. He's going to get up a lot of threes. And I think if you just watch him and you look at some of his the defensive effort statistics, such as like steals or blocks, you might think Christian Wood is a better defender than he actually is. And he's another one of these guys to where if you weren't tapped in with Rockets basketball, where they were one of the youngest teams in the league, if you weren't watching those early Pistons teams with like the last couple of years, Piston teams where there wasn't a lot of talent there, I'm not calling Christian Wood a looter and a riot, but I think in terms of just looking at his production and what why he might be coming off the bench, why it seems like he was on a trade block for a minute, and teams were hesitant to really give up a package with him. And it's kind of his, I think I would still define him as having questionable defensive awareness at best. There's a lot of times where you're just watching him where he simply gets lost, or he's not really paying attention to where he should be at on all times of the floor. So when it comes to, especially for a young player, if you're making young mistakes, you can kind of look past that. Christian Wood isn't necessarily a young player at this point in his career. So on this Dallas team, it's part of the reason why he's also a free agent after the season. So, they gave up the pick they gave up. I think it was lottery protected, obviously, and in the mid-20s, I believe. It would be interesting to see. I don't remember who they end up taking with that pick. Might have been a Tata pick now I'm thinking about it out loud. But, just to see what I do think, even like you said, Red, shout out to JaVale McGee as well. Turning his career around. He was incredible for the Suns last year, especially when he just playing a two-man game with Chris Paul. We've seen his ability to be an elite play finisher, just in terms of the insane since the day he's come to the league, having one of the most ridiculous lob radius and just finishing ability, and he finishes from some of the craziest over the top and insane just angles, and he's all arms and legs. Shout out to JaVale actually becoming a vet and a pro's pro at this point in his career. You hate it's hard to really shed labels when things follow you, especially when you have the best studio sports show making you the butt of one of their biggest segments on the show. It doesn't great, but yeah, JaVale kind of beat the goofball Shaq and the Fool allegations. So shout out to JaVale. I do think just in terms of Dwight Powell, another part, just the unheralded reason to why he played a huge part of why this team was pretty good and switchable defensively. So I think even sharing a lot of those minutes with a guy like JaVale, they're going to be getting solid rotational minutes from everybody to where, yeah, a lot of the problems that this Mavs team is going to have, it's not necessarily going to be a regular season issue. It's probably a lot of things that, are some of the holes on their roster, easy to pick apart in the playoff series, which remains to be seen, and finding those right long-term pieces. So I mean, what else do you see just in terms of strengths, weaknesses, lineup combinations that really sticks out to you about this Dallas team coming into the year?
I mean, they got a lot of sneaky shooters at the power forward position. Bertans when he's on is also just a great shooter. I think being able to, as we know that the Dallas Mavericks love to employ some Europeans to ride with Luca out. They're big on employing Europeans. So I think just the pick and pop and kind of just the spacing from corner threes with somebody like Kleba or Bertans with Luca is going to be a deadly combination. Obviously, like we said, we spoke on Tim Hardaway Jr. and Christian Wood as their top scoring options off the bench, but we can't sleep on those. Center depth is pretty good, so I mean this team's going to be good. It's just not going to be great. I think that's what it comes down to. Like their weaknesses are a center that can get buckets in the starting lineup and probably just a secondary go to scorer, realistically. And shout out to Frank Ntilikina, still holding on to the NBA
He might.
dream.
He's gonna have a huge part on this team this year, man.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, like he this is the time to kind of remake that narrative of who he is in the NBA. Obviously, he's not going to become the biggest scorer, but if he's going to be able to become a serviceable and go to backup point guard that keeps offense moving, this is the year to do it with that lockdown ability that he has.
Man, I just wanted to say shout out to Maxi Kleber, bro. I think he's turned himself into one of the best just stories in the league. And I think I think obviously just watching him and where he's come, not sure how many people know about some of the backstory for Maxi Kleber. He was somebody who early part of his career got a lot of love for being an interesting prospect coming out of Germany. I think that by the time he was actually draft eligible, he was around 25. The beginning of his career was really, messed up due to, I think he tore his ACL when he was like 18 or 19. And I think he had also like broke a finger one year, and he's had some really strange injuries that really kept him apart. He just recently signed a contract extension with the Mavs, which, like you said, just in terms of getting that contract for him. But he's one of those guys where just an underrated and a great role player for a guy who's like 6'10", 6'11". He moves extremely well for somebody his size, really nimble and agile. And, he brings them a great floor spacer that's also, a pretty damn good rim protector. And we talk about that list of guys who are actually, can guard, in space, move their feet and actually protect the rim while actually being a plus shooter. It's not that many guys in the league. So to get somebody like that on a $10, $11 million contract for a couple of years, yeah, that's a part of just plugging up the rotations and getting, solid, plus serviceable minutes from every spot in your rotation. So shout out to Maxi Kleber. Just had to say shout out to him. Always good to see guys like that get get a good contract. They also still have, the best cheerleader in the NBA on his team in Theo Pinson. The vibes are going to be immaculate wherever Theo Pinson is. Probably Theo Pinson might be he might, stick around the NBA for a decade just for locker room vibes and team chemistry and, just overall, team morale. So shout out to Theo Pinson one time over there. So I mean, just to obviously the over under for this Mavs team is 48 and a half wins. They won 42. They went 52 and 30 last season for this team. Raz, how are you feeling about that number?
I think they're a 47 win team, so I'm gonna go under on this one. I know Luca will probably make me eat those words with some heroics and some season games to get over that number, but I feel good going with the under. They're gonna be a good team. I just think the drop off from the top of the West is gonna be kind of severe.
Somebody has to lose. Somebody has to lose these games in
Yeah.
the West for sure. And yeah, I do think that just in terms of they have enough depth, just in terms of the pieces on this team fit, but there's also a glass ceiling that this team is going to have a really time, leaping over. In terms of the regular season number, I'm going to take that over. I just think the fact that if you watch anybody that watched Luka and Eurobasket, there's kind of been the running joke, and it's not really. I guess it's not really a running joke about Luka Doncic coming into the season out of shape the past couple of years. It also, if you go back and pull up his early season splits, early season box score numbers, you can see he was definitely on, the playing myself into shape. He kind of, hits hits his form, in like December, early January, and then we see Luka Doncic's MVP form from what he did in Eurobasket, just carrying that Slovenian national team. Luka seemed to be in some of the best shape of his career, just in terms of what he's able to do. So if we get MVP, Luka is definitely a future MVP award winner. It's just kind of shaping up to be what's going to be whether it's the narrative. Sports writers love a good story, and checking off all those boxes. Is that going to be this year? To where, yeah, Luka's just able to carry this team to a 50-win pace from start to finish. Yeah, I kind of that's kind of where I see for this year in particular. I know the sports writers, the NBA writers, are dying to give Luka his MVP, and yeah, I don't know if you had to choose a non-Jokic favorite for MVP this season, Raz. Would it be Luka, or would you give it to like say like Giannis or Embiid?
Yeah, I would go Luca. I think he's who they want, and the narratives will be strong. And we've seen before, even with like shout out to Russ, but like when Russ had his triple double, his teams weren't top of the West, and he was still able to get that MVP. So obviously that's not the determining factor anymore. So yeah, I mean I will go Luca.
Yeah, it's not a bad offer. Anybody else you wanted to touch upon on this team backup roster? I know we wanted to finishing on. We brought up Jaden Hardy. Didn't know if we wanted to speak about him a little bit more on that end because and also wanted to say I think this might be a very important year for Josh Green just in terms of um, I think he took some steps down the stretch for them in terms of playing that rotational role for them and being able to contribute. Super long and athletic, but he doesn't. He's not one of those guys that needs to leverage his tools in an over aggressive way. I think he's a real solid defender. He has really good quick feet and somebody who's able to use his lateral quickness to really keep move his lower base and really affect whatever whoever ball handler that he's guarding, his ability to get off good shots just because of how strong he is. Like I said, this team, it makes no sense how this team ended up as a top 10 defense last year. But
Yeah.
I do think it's also not something that they won't be able to repeat. I think there's the Christian Wood aspect of it that he might be able to. He's not a great defender, but I think he's good enough if you have other capable defenders around to where he's not gonna tank or crater your entire defensive scheme. But I think if you just want to finish off on like, what are your expectations about Jaden Hardy? I'm not sure if we had a chance on some of the longer form draft stuff just to talk about him as a player, but we could wrap it up on that essentially.
I mean, I think for him, I'm trying to find where he'll get those early minutes. I think obviously Frank is somebody that's played in this system already. Hardaway's going to get his minutes, so I mean Jaden Hardy's opportunities may be a bit limited to start, but I do think he'll have the ability to crack this rotation. Just with like you said, his strength, athleticism, and just being able to as the game slows down for him, he'll be able to kind of run and be proficient in some of the offensive sets that kid runs. But I mean, right now I feel a little bit of him being a bit of an afterthought on this team as they're looking to contend, for championship aspirations.
It's going to be really interesting to see, and yeah, he's probably going to have a chance to make a year one. He's going to have a chance to break into the rotation at some point. Now, does he stay into it? That's going to probably play into a huge part of how good defensively he's going to be from year one. I know when we did our draft breakdowns, I had Jaden Hardy in my lottery. I'm not exactly sure what number in the lottery or like right outside of my lottery because I'm buying just the offensive repertoire. I think he's going to a team that's going to need their need of what he brings to the table, just in terms of another scorer off the bench that's going to be able to get their own and just lighten up the burden of creation on a guy like Luka Doncic. But he has effortless deep range on his jumper and just a really high release point. I don't think it's going to be a problem to mechanically. I think he has a shot that's going to translate to NBA defenses. Also just watching what he did over the course of his G League Ignite season, it wasn't ugly. And if you're just going to look at a lot of the numbers and the efficiency that he really lacked in. A part of the reason why he went from a top 10 prospect into, he basically fell in preseason, top 10 prospect preseason, and ended up falling into the second round. But I do think, just in terms of there might be some, he's going to have to get stronger and prove that he can be, more effective finishing around the rim. But I do think he has, just in terms of dribble package and the ability to, create for himself in those type of situations. He's able to navigate through defenses and, get to his pull-up jump shot basically at will. And that type of skill at the NBA level, at some point, I think whether it's year two, I was also somebody who thought a guy like Tyrell Terry out of Stanford a couple years ago when the Mavericks drafted him had a chance to kind of fill that microwave scorer, next in a backcourt with Luka. Never really materialized. I know he was in Memphis last time I checked. Not sure what's going on with Tyrell right now. But yeah, I do think, Jaden Hardy, I think he's going to have the bag. And I think, just in terms of he has the confidence of an NBA player. So he's probably going to spend a lot of time in the G League early just in terms of, that roster crunch and having it, just having a lot of guys to leapfrog for rotation minutes. But I think more time in the G League, he should be able to put up even more buckets, and he's going to be on this radar. And if any injuries happen to this to this Dallas team, he's going to have a chance to step in and play a major role in year one. But that'll wrap us up unless you have anything else, Raz.
No, I'm all good, man. I think I'm still hammering that under as we spoke about it. I'm probably gonna regret it, but I'm gonna stay true. And we're gonna at the end of the year we're gonna keep counting on all these. We might have to run it back and keep a tally.
But yeah, man, let us know in the comments. Make sure you guys are subscribe. Make sure you are checking out all the content that's going to be dropping shortly on this draft season podcast. We got a couple more interesting projects coming to you guys soon, so make sure you guys are on the lookout. Draft season podcast. We will definitely be back with more content coming to you guys shortly.